Hello everyone, Team Asteroid Miner here presenting our post-mortem video. Asteroid Miner is a top-down space-themed shooter with 3D objects. The game takes place in a series of 5 asteroids that the player must carefully navigate through while mining as many resources as possible. These resources are in turn exchanged for cash that can be used to purchase different upgrades in the game. Within these asteroids, the player will encounter multiple different traps and enemies. Colliding with traps and enemies causes the player to lose fuel. If the player runs out of fuel prior to reaching the goal in the level, the game is over and the player must try again. Originally, we planned to have the primary challenge in the game be difficult terrains that the player must navigate through carefully in order to reach the end of the level. We found that this was not as fun for the player, so we incorporated the traps and enemies to create more interesting setups in the game. Next, we will cover how the game has progressed throughout the development process. Hello everyone, Ron McEwen from Team Asteroid Miner here to walk you through how things have progressed in the development process. Here I have a build from early on in the process. This comes from the end of the first month of development. At this point there was only one level in the game, and you can see that we already have some of the initial systems in place, such as ship movements, the ability to fire lasers, and then also a collection of resources. At this point there was no sound effects and no particle effects in the game, and we used simple shapes to represent many of the objects such as the resources and then also the traps that we had already developed. Next we'll take a look at a build that represents the final version of the game. Here we have a version of the game from the final week in the development process. There are now 5 levels in the game and a tutorial. Simple shapes have been replaced with more realistic objects and models, and levels have been redesigned with the intent of providing more interesting setups for the player. Floors and walls are now textured, and many of the interactions in the game have sound effects and particle effects to provide more player feedback. We have also redesigned the heads-up display to provide important information to the player without hindering view. Lastly, this version of the game includes the new versions of the enemies, which are from the art team and also include animations. Next we will cover some of the processes Team Asteroid Miner used to help in developing the game.
For our design process, we use the Agile process for our weekly development cycles. Each week was started with a flexible task list that would then be modified as feedback and issues came up. All the tasks were broken up so that if one area was having issues, it wouldn't affect the rest of the game, so we always had a working product ready. Other process that helped our development was the initial setup of a game design document. This made it easier as we worked individually to stay on the same track and always have a reference so we all know the goal. Other skills I have found useful is learning to collaborate with each other, code and coding styles, building in small sections so testing can start as soon as possible. There's always going to be something that can be changed. It's up to us to decide where to draw the line and make the project complete.
When I look back at our game's development and look at what really went well, I think of 3 categories. One is approaching the game with a unified vision on how to go forth, and this sometimes means letting go of some of the ways you thought the game should be developed. The next is specializing in an individual task within the game. This allows your designers to act in their strongest attributes. The last is collaboration. Instead of working in a 4-person setting, either working solo or in groups of 2 or 3, you get more complex tasks done quicker. When I look at what could be improved, it would be documentation and notation, which also leads into hunting for bugs. Many of our scripts are complex, and without just the notes within the scripts, we could have used more documents loaded in Google Drive to notate whenever we made major changes.